All right, so get ready, because today we are going deep on something that, well, you probably think you already understand: empathy. But trust me, there's a lot more to it.
Yeah, a lot
Or
more.
way more than just, feeling someone's vibes or whatever.
Right.
We're talking 6 distinct aspects of empathy,
6,
at least,
at least. Yeah.
based on Karla McLaren's work in The Art of Empathy.
Great book.
And some of her online posts too. And get this, even the folks we might, label as totally unempathetic
Right.
could be secretly mastering some of these skills.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? We
Yeah.
often toss around that word empathy as if it's, just a simple on-off switch.
Right.
But really it's more like a whole control panel with all these different levers and buttons.
Oh, I like that.
And one of McLaren's key insights is that empathy is not just, some wishy-gushy feeling. It's a set of skills, a process we can actually learn and develop.
Right. So let's break down this control panel, though. First up, emotion contagion, which sounds a bit like catching a psychic cold, right?
Well, in a way, it is. Think about it like you walk into a room and everyone is just buzzing with excitement.
Yeah.
And suddenly you find yourself grinning for no reason.
Right.
Or you witness a friend's heartbreak
Mm-hmm.
and suddenly your chest kind of aches in sympathy.
Yeah.
That's emotion contagion. Your brain's mirror neurons are firing away, picking up on others' emotions as if they were your own.
So it's like we're wired for emotional Wi-Fi, constantly downloading signals from those around us.
Yeah.
But hold on, isn't there a risk of getting swamped by all that emotional data?
Absolutely. And this is where things get really interesting. Unregulated emotion contagion can lead to burnout, compassion fatigue, even total shutdown.
Wow.
Imagine a therapist absorbing every client's trauma without any kind of emotional filtering. I mean, it'd be a wreck.
Yeah. So it's not just about feeling, it's about managing those feelings, right?
Exactly. And this actually challenges some common assumptions about folks on the autism spectrum.
Right.
They're often perceived as lacking empathy.
Yeah.
But some researchers, including McLaren, suggest that they might be actually experiencing hyperempathy.
Hyperempathy.
Yeah, their emotional antennae are picking up so much that it can become overwhelming.
Wow. So it's not a lack of empathy, but maybe too much. That really flips the script on how we view neurodiversity. Because we've got to regulate that emotional inflow, but how do we even know if we're accurately tuning into the right frequency, not just projecting our own stuff? That's where empathic accuracy comes in.
Exactly. Empathic accuracy is about correctly reading those emotional signals, understanding the nuances of what someone is truly feeling.
Right.
It's like becoming a skilled emotional detective, recognizing those micro expressions, tone of voice, body language, all those subtle cues that kind of reveal the truth behind the facade.
So we're not just mirroring emotions, we're becoming emotion interpreters.
Right.
But what happens if our emotional vocabulary is like, I feel good, I feel bad, I feel hungry,
Right. Yeah, that's where things can get a little fuzzy. Having a rich emotional vocabulary is really crucial for empathic accuracy. If you can only label your feelings as good or bad.
Yeah.
I mean, you're missing out on this whole spectrum of emotional data. McLaren actually has a free online list to help you expand your emotional vocabulary. Imagine being able to actually pinpoint exactly what you're feeling,
Right.
like frustrated, disappointed, or maybe a touch of wistful nostalgia. That's powerful.
It's like upgrading from dial-up to fiber optic, right?
Absolutely.
But here's the thing: even with a fancy emotional dictionary, how can we be sure we're not just projecting our own baggage onto others?
Yeah, the classic empathy trap. We've all been there, I think. McLaren emphasizes the importance of checking in, confirming with the other person. So, instead of assuming, try saying something like, "Hey, you seem frustrated. Is that right?"
So it's not just about feeling; it's about communicating, making sure we're on the same page. But what about those times when someone's giving off like mixed signals, or maybe they're just not being straight up about it?
Well, that's where it gets really tricky. Emotional dishonesty, social conditioning to hide feelings. These can make empathic accuracy a real challenge.
Right.
It's like trying to, solve a puzzle with missing pieces.
Right.
But even in those situations, by paying close attention and staying curious, we can often kind of glean some valuable insights.
It's like becoming an emotional archaeologist, carefully excavating the truth beneath layers of social debris. And this actually makes me think about the whole nature versus nurture debate. How much of empathy is hardwired, and how much can we actually learn and improve?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a question that's fascinated researchers for decades.
Right.
And there's definitely a biological basis for empathy, for sure. But the good news is, research also shows that empathy is it's a skill we can cultivate throughout our lives.
Oh, that's good.
And that actually brings us to the third aspect of empathy, emotion regulation.
Yeah, okay. Emotion regulation. So it sounds like this is where we learn to become the masters of our own emotional domain, right?
You got it. Think of it like this. If your emotions are, if your emotions are a pot simmering on the stove, emotion regulation is about adjusting the heat.
Oh, I like that.
Right. Sometimes you need to turn it up to really feel things. Other times you need to kind of simmer down to avoid boiling over.
Yeah. So it's about being in control of those emotional dials, not letting them control us. But what about those negative emotions that we're often told to like suppress or ignore?
Yeah. Well, here's where McLaren really flips the script again.
Yeah.
She challenges that whole idea of negative emotions. She argues that all emotions are valuable messengers,
Okay.
each with a specific purpose. So anger, for example, can signal that a boundary has been crossed, while sadness, might indicate a need for reflection or connection.
So instead of trying to banish those bad feelings, we need to learn to listen to what they're trying to tell us.
Exactly. Imagine your emotions are like a team of advisors, each with their own expertise.
Yeah.
So instead of silencing them, you actually want to hear them out.
Right.
Understand their perspectives, and then decide how best to respond.
So it's like we're the CEO of our own emotional boardroom, making strategic decisions based on the input of our feelings.
Yeah, I love that.
Right. That's a pretty empowering way to look at it. And this actually makes me think about how we often try to fix or dismiss other people's feelings instead of just being present with them. Maybe that comes from not knowing how to handle our own emotional world first.
That's a brilliant insight. Our ability to regulate our own emotions directly impacts our capacity for empathy. When we're comfortable with our own emotional landscape, we're less likely to feel, threatened or overwhelmed by the emotions of others.
So mastering our own inner world is the key to unlocking deeper connections with others. It's like that saying, "You can't pour from an empty cup." Right? Okay, I'm ready for the next level. Perspective taking.
Oh yes, perspective taking.
Mm.
This is where things get really interesting.
I feel like this one is all about putting ourselves in someone else's shoes, seeing the world through their unique lens.
You're right on track. It's the ability to step outside of our own experience and imagine how someone else might be, perceiving a situation, feeling, and thinking.
Okay, imagine you're reading a captivating novel, totally immersed in the world of the characters.
Right.
Perspective taking is like stepping inside their minds, understanding their motivations, fears, and dreams, even if they're radically different from your own.
That's a perfect example. And this is actually where the cognitive and affective aspects of empathy really intertwine.
Oh, okay.
We're not just feeling what someone else is feeling, but also actively trying to understand the why behind those feelings.
Mm-hmm.
It's like becoming a cognitive chameleon, adapting our mental framework to kind of match another's perspective.
And McLaren actually talks about how reading fiction can actually help us develop those perspective-taking muscles.
Absolutely.
It's like empathic weightlifting.
Yeah, exactly. Reading exposes us to a diverse range of perspectives and experiences, expanding our capacity for understanding, challenging our assumptions.
Mm-hmm.
It's like taking our empathy for a test drive in a safe and controlled environment.
So next time I'm lost in a good book, I can tell myself I'm actually doing some serious empathy training.
Yeah.
But here's a question. Even if we can accurately read emotions and see things from another's point of view, does that automatically mean we care? That's where concern for others comes in, right?
Absolutely. Concern for others is the heart of empathy. It's the fuel that drives us to connect and engage.
Okay.
It's about genuinely caring about another person's well-being, feeling invested in their in their experience.
Okay, think about a time you might have misjudged someone based on their outward behavior, only to discover later that there was, so much more going on beneath the surface.
Happens all the time. We tend to label people uh, as unempathic based on limited interactions or perceived coldness. But McLaren challenges us to dig a little deeper. She points out that often that those who appear uncaring, maybe a boss under pressure or a politician caught in a power struggle, or even a loved one struggling with their own burdens, might actually be experiencing compassion fatigue or burnout.
So it's not that they lack the capacity for empathy, but maybe they've hit their emotional limit.
Exactly. Think of it like this. If you constantly give without replenishing your own reserves, eventually you're going to run dry.
Yeah.
Right? And that can manifest as a lack of concern, even though deep down there's still a well of empathy there.
Wow, that's a powerful reframe. It's like saying, hey, maybe that person who seems cold or distant is actually hurting and in need of empathy themselves.
Precisely. And this is where things get really nuanced. McLaren suggests that we often perceive a lack of concern most intensely when it directly affects our own needs.
Right.
So if a boss seems uncaring, it might feel more personal because their lack of concern impacts our job security or well-being. But what if instead of judging, we approach those situations with curiosity and compassion? What if we recognize that everyone, even those who seem most detached, is fighting their own battles?
That's a challenging but incredibly compassionate perspective. It's like saying, instead of meeting coldness with coldness, let's try to offer a spark of warmth. But how do we put that into practice?
That's a great question, and it leads us to the sixth and final aspect of empathy: perceptive engagement.
Perceptive engagement. It sounds like this is where all those other pieces of the puzzle come together.
You got it. It's the culmination of all those other skills: emotion contagion, empathic accuracy, emotion regulation, perspective taking, and concern for others.
Mm-hmm.
It's about taking all that we've learned and using it to skillfully respond to the needs of others.
So it's not just about feeling or understanding, but about doing, taking action based on that empathic knowledge.
Exactly. But here's a crucial caveat. Sometimes the most perceptive action is inaction.
Okay.
If someone needs space, the most empathic response might be to simply honor that need and give them the distance that they require. Perceptive engagement is about responding in a way that truly serves the other person, not just our own urge to fix or help.
That's so important. It's about being responsive to the other person's needs, not just our own agenda. And speaking of agendas, didn't McLaren mention this fascinating experiment with toddlers, goldfish crackers, and broccoli? That illustrates this perfectly.
She did. It's a classic study that reveals this difference between generosity and true empathy. Imagine this: a researcher sits at a table with a toddler, and between them are two bowls. One filled with yummy goldfish crackers.
Oh yeah.
The other with raw broccoli.
Okay, I'm already giggling just picturing those toddlers' faces.
Now the researcher pretends to dislike the goldfish and love the broccoli.
Yeah.
Then asks the toddler for some food.
Okay.
The younger toddlers, bless their hearts, they offer the goldfish, assuming everyone loves them as much as they do. But the older toddlers, those who have developed, who develop more perceptive engagement, they offer the broccoli, recognizing that the researcher's needs differ from their own.
That is hilarious and so insightful. It shows that true empathy isn't about giving what we like, but giving what the other person needs, even if it means sacrificing our own precious goldfish.
Precisely. And those toddlers were demonstrating this as young as 18 months old. It suggests that the seeds of empathy are planted early, but they need nurturing and development to blossom fully.
That's incredible. So we've gone from We've gone from catching emotional colds to becoming emotional master chefs. And I'm already seeing empathy in a whole new light. But before we get too carried away, I know we've only just scratched the surface of perceptive engagement.
You're right. There's so much more to uncover about perceptive engagement.
Right.
It's like the Swiss Army knife of empathy, with different tools for different situations.
Okay, so let's unpack those tools then. What are some real world examples of perceptive engagement in action?
Well, imagine you're dealing with a colleague who's stressed out about a project.
Okay.
They might be snapping at everyone, isolating themselves, or just generally radiating anxiety. Now, someone with low perceptive engagement might try to cheer them up with jokes, offer unsolicited advice, or worse, tell them to just relax.
Oh yeah, just relax.
Right. But someone skilled in perceptive engagement would read the situation very differently.
Yeah.
Oh.
They'd recognize that their colleague isn't looking for a pep talk, but maybe just needs a listening ear,
Yeah.
a space to vent, or even just some quiet support.
Exactly. They might offer a simple acknowledgement like, "Hey, you seem really overloaded. Is there anything I can help with?"
Right.
Or they might just offer a comforting presence, sitting with them in silence without trying to fix anything. It's about meeting the person where they are emotionally and responding in a way that feels supportive to them.
That makes me think about how often we jump to solutions without really taking the time to understand the other person's experience.
Yeah.
We want to be helpful, but sometimes the most helpful thing is just to be present and listen.
Absolutely. And sometimes perceptive engagement requires us to set aside our own preferences and really tune in to what the other person needs, even if it seems counterintuitive. Remember the toddlers and the broccoli?
Oh yes, those wise little broccoli givers.
Well, think about it. Those toddlers were demonstrating an amazing capacity for perceptive engagement. They could easily, given the researcher what they liked, the goldfish crackers, but they chose to give what the researcher wanted, even though it wasn't their own preference.
So it's about putting aside our own assumptions and desires and really tuning into what the other person is experiencing, even if it's different from our own reality. Precisely, and that's where perceptive engagement becomes so powerful in building trust and connection. When we demonstrate that we genuinely care about the other person's well-being and are willing to meet them where they are, we create a space for vulnerability and authenticity.
It's like saying, "I see you, I hear you, and I'm here for you, even if I don't fully understand your experience."
Yeah.
But let's be real. Perceptive engagement isn't always easy, is it?
Not at all. It can be incredibly challenging, especially when we're dealing with strong emotions or conflicting perspectives. It requires us to be mindful, self-aware, and willing to step outside of our comfort zones.
And what about those times when we just get that wrong, when our attempt at perceptive engagement falls flat or even backfires? Well, those moments can be frustrating, but they're also valuable learning opportunities. It's important to remember that empathy is a continuous process of learning and growth. We're not going to get it right all the time, and that's okay.
So it's not about perfection, but about intention and continual refinement of our skills.
Exactly, and just like any skill, the more we practice, the better we become.
Right.
McLaren offers some fantastic exercises and techniques in her book and online resources to help us kind of strengthen those empathy muscles.
I'm definitely adding The Art of Empathy to my to my must-read list.
Yeah.
But even without diving into the book just yet, I'm starting to see how these 6 aspects can inform my interaction with others. It's about being more mindful, more curious, and approaching each encounter with a sense of openness and compassion.
Those are wonderful takeaways. And remember, empathy is contagious. The more we practice it, the more we inspire others to do the same. It's like a ripple effect, spreading kindness and understanding throughout our relationships and communities.
So it's not just about improving our own lives, but about creating a more compassionate world for everyone.
Absolutely. And that brings us back to that question you posed earlier. If empathy is a language we all speak, how can we become more fluent?
I love that analogy. And as we become more fluent in empathy, we not only enhance our relationships, but also contribute to a more harmonious and understanding society. But let's be honest, not everyone is going to be thrilled about learning this new language. Some people might see empathy as a weakness, or they might be resistant to changing their communication style.
That's true. And this is where we need to remember that empathy isn't about is about forcing our perspective on others or trying to change who they are. It's about meeting them where they are with compassion and understanding.
So it's not about imposing our empathy, but about inviting others to join us in this shared language.
Precisely. And sometimes the most powerful way to do that is through our own example. By consistently demonstrating empathy in our interactions, we can create a ripple effect that inspires others to do the same.
So we can be empathy ambassadors, spreading the word through our actions and interactions. I love that.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe one day empathy will be as widely spoken as any other language, connecting hearts and minds across cultures and continents.
Wouldn't that be amazing? A world where empathy is the norm, not the exception.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm feeling inspired. But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I have one final thought for our listeners to ponder.
You're absolutely right. There's so much more to uncover about perceptive engagement.
Right.
It's like the Swiss Army knife of empathy.
Okay.
With different tools for different situations.
Okay, so let's unpack those tools then. What are some real world examples of perceptive engagement in action?
Well, imagine you're dealing with a colleague who's stressed out about a project.
Right.
They might be snapping at everyone, isolating themselves, or just generally radiating anxiety. Now, someone with low perceptive engagement might try to cheer them up with jokes.
Right.
Offer unsolicited advice, or worse, tell them to just relax.
Oh yeah, just relax.
Right. But someone skilled in perceptive engagement would read that situation very differently.
They recognize that their colleague isn't looking for a pep talk, but maybe just needs a listening ear, a space to vent, or even just some quiet support.
Exactly. They might offer a simple acknowledgement, like, "Hey, you seem really overloaded. Is there anything I can help with?"
Right.
Or they might just offer a comforting presence, sitting with them in silence, without trying to fix anything. It's about meeting the person where they are emotionally and responding in a way that feels supportive to them.
That makes me think about how often we jump to solutions without really taking the time to understand the other person's experience.
Right.
We want to be helpful, but sometimes the most helpful thing is just to be present and listen.
Absolutely. And sometimes perceptive engagement requires us to set aside our own preferences and really tune in to what the other person needs, even if it seems counterintuitive. Remember the toddlers and the broccoli?
Oh yes, those wise little broccoli givers.
Well, think about it. Those toddlers were demonstrating an amazing capacity for perceptive engagement. They could easily give the researcher what they liked, the goldfish crackers, but they chose to give what the researcher wanted, even though it wasn't their own preference.
So it's about putting aside our own assumptions and desires, and really tuning into what the other person is experiencing, even if it's different from our own reality.
Precisely, and that's where perceptive engagement becomes so powerful in building trust and connection. When we demonstrate that we genuinely care about the other person's well-being and are willing to meet them where they are, we create a space for vulnerability and authenticity.
It's like saying, "I see you, I hear you, and I'm here for you, even if I don't fully understand your experience."
Mm-hmm.
But let's be real, perceptive engagement isn't always easy, is it?
Not at all. It can be incredibly challenging, especially when we're dealing with strong emotions or conflicting perspectives. It requires us to be mindful, self-aware, and willing to step outside of our comfort zones.
And what about those times when we just get it wrong? You know,
Yeah.
when our attempt at perceptive engagement falls flat or even backfires?
Well, those moments can be frustrating, but they're also valuable learning opportunities. It's important to remember that empathy is a continuous process of learning and growth. We're not going to get it right all the time, and
Right.
that's okay.
So it's not about perfection, but about intention and continual refinement of our skills.
Exactly, and just like any skill, the more we practice, the better we become. McLaren offers some fantastic exercises and techniques in her book and online resources to help us, strengthen those empathy muscles.
I'm definitely adding The Art of Empathy to my must-read list, but
Mhm.
but even without diving into the book just yet, I'm starting to see how these 6 aspects can inform my interactions with others. It's about being more mindful, more curious, and approaching each encounter with a sense of openness and compassion.
Those are wonderful takeaways. And remember, empathy is contagious. The more we practice it, the more we inspire others to do the same. It's like it's like a ripple effect, spreading kindness and understanding throughout our relationships and communities.
So it's not just about improving our own lives, but about creating a more compassionate world for everyone.
Absolutely. And that brings us back to that question you posed earlier. If empathy is a language we all speak, how can we become more fluent?
I love that. I love that analogy. And as we become more fluent in empathy, we not only enhance our relationships, but also contribute to a more harmonious and understanding society. But let's be honest, not everyone is going to be thrilled about learning this new language. Some people might see empathy as a weakness, or they might be resistant to changing their communication style.
That's true.
Mm.
And this is where we need to remember that empathy isn't about forcing our perspective on others or trying to change who they are. It's about meeting them where they are with compassion and understanding.
So it's not about imposing our empathy, but about inviting others to join us in this shared language.
Precisely. And sometimes sometimes the most powerful way to do that is through our own example, by consistently demonstrating empathy in our interactions. We can create a ripple effect that inspires others to do the same.
So we can be empathy ambassadors, spreading the word through our actions and interactions. I love that.
Exactly. And who knows? Maybe one day empathy will be as widely spoken as any other language, connecting hearts and minds across cultures and continents.
Wouldn't that be amazing? A world where empathy is the norm, not the exception. Okay. I'm feeling inspired. But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I have one final thought for our listeners to ponder. So as we wrap up this deep dive into empathy, I'm realizing that empathy is more than just a buzzword. It's like the superpower we all possess, but might not fully understand how to use.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. It's like we've all been given this incredible gift, but haven't quite figured out how to unwrap it and access its full potential.
And Karla McLaren's 6 aspects of empathy: emotion contagion, empathic accuracy, emotional regulation, perspective taking, concern for others, and perceptive engagement. Those are like the instruction manual we've been missing.
Exactly. They provide a framework for understanding how empathy works, how to develop those skills, and most importantly, how to put them into action in our in our everyday lives.
So let's do a quick review for our listeners, just to make sure those instructions are crystal clear. We started with emotion contagion,
Right.
where we talked about how our brains are wired to pick up on the emotional vibes of others.
Right. It's like it's like we're all walking around with these invisible antennas,
Yeah.
constantly transmitting and receiving emotional signals.
Then we moved on to empathic accuracy, where we learned that it's not enough to just feel those vibes. We've got to be able to interpret them correctly.
And that involves developing, developing a rich emotional vocabulary, paying attention to those subtle cues, and checking in with the other person to make sure we're on the same page.
From there, we explored the importance of emotion regulation.
Right.
Because let's face it, we can't truly understand and respond to others' emotions if we're drowning in our own.
Absolutely, it's about learning to be the master of our own emotional domain, knowing when to turn up the heat and when to simmer down.
And once we've got our own emotions under control, we can start to practice perspective taking, stepping into someone else's shoes and seeing the world through their unique lens.
And that involves not just feeling what they're feeling, but also understanding the why behind those feelings, their thoughts, motivations, and experiences.
Then we talked about concern for others, that essential ingredient that separates true empathy from just going through the motions.
Right, because without genuine care and compassion, all the other aspects of empathy fall flat. It's like having a fancy car without any gas. You're not going anywhere.
And finally, we arrived at perceptive engagement, that beautiful culmination of all the other aspects, where we take all that we've learned and use it to respond skillfully and compassionately to the needs of others.
It's like we've taken all those raw ingredients and baked them into a delicious empathy cake.
Okay, I'm officially hungry for cake. But seriously, this whole conversation has been incredibly eye-opening. I feel like I've gained a whole new appreciation for the complexity and power of empathy. It's not just some feel-good emotion. It's a skill set, a way of being in the world that can transform our relationships and even create a more compassionate society.
I couldn't agree more. And the most exciting part is that it's a lifelong journey of learning and growth. We can always deepen our understanding, refine our skills, and expand our capacity for empathy.
So no matter where you are on your empathy journey, there's always room for growth and development. And if you're feeling inspired to learn more, I highly recommend checking out Karla McLaren's work. She's a true empathy guru.
Yeah.
Her book, The Art of Empathy, and her online resources are packed with insights, exercises, and practical tips for cultivating these essential skills.
And remember, empathy isn't just about reading books or listening to podcasts. It's about putting those insights into action, practicing those skills in our everyday interactions.
So next time you find yourself in a challenging conversation, or you encounter someone who's struggling, take a moment to tune into those 6 aspects of empathy. Ask yourself, how can I practice emotion contagion, but in a healthy way? How can I ensure that I'm being, empathically accurate? Am I regulating my own emotions effectively? Can I step into their shoes and see things from their perspective? Do I genuinely care about their well-being? And how can I respond in a way that demonstrates perceptive engagement?
Those are fantastic questions to keep in mind. And remember, even small acts of empathy can have a ripple effect, creating a more compassionate and connected world, one interaction at a time.
So go forth and be empathy ninjas, spreading kindness and understanding wherever you go. And until next time, keep diving deep.